You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast by Sherisse Bisram. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Like, share, follow, subscribe, and listen out for more. Stay tuned. Okay, hello everyone. We are on episode 10 and we did have a break last week. I was away, so I just honoured the space of just having that. And what a lovely way actually to have that, finding the balance in my own life, which is something that I'm really passionate about. And I have the lovely Jade Elana who is here to share her journey, her expertise and everything about what she does. And please tell us about yourself, Jade, and all the things.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Jade Elana. I am a mum to 3 beautifully chaotic children and mentor for women, and I help women to reconnect with their true self and find their balance as they evolve. I think we live in a world which leads women to imbalance, to disconnect, as we try so hard to show up as the woman we think we should be. And so I am so passionate about helping women to just reconnect with who they truly are, show up authentically and be the best version of them amongst every role.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And your story's been really interesting. Obviously, I met Jade. It was really funny because we met up the other day and we were just laughing about the fact that we actually don't know each other very well. We seem to know each other really well. It's just one of those, like, definitely a soul connection. But what 100%. I love about Jade straight away is obviously your energy is so calm, as I said, and soft and welcome. It's so angelic, and I hope everyone hears this throughout this episode as well. But also, like, your journey into becoming the version of you now hasn't been easy. And obviously you've had lots of ups and downs and having to sort of mold and change to find that balance within yourself and your life. So did you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, of course. So I was born to 2 young parents. They were both only 19 when they had me and then had my brother. And they separated around my age of 3. And of course, being so young with the separation, they separated and we were moved out of the home. And my mum, being so young, was left vulnerable in that way, financially. But we were surrounded by love always. And I think they made a conscious effort to make sure that we knew that we were loved by both of them, regardless of the situation. But obviously, growing up and moving forward, we were in separate homes and going between the homes and the houses, and there was always a imbalance financially and within circumstances around that. So we saw, my brother and I saw kind of 2 sides of the coin, if that makes sense, and made us quite aware of the difference in circumstances that people have throughout their lives, and that it isn't always for everyone as it is for us. And so when I got into my teenage years, I was really focused on freedom. And in that way, I believe that freedom came from money. And so I was chasing that a lot. And by the time I was 15, I had 3 jobs. I used to go and clean the primary school, which pencil shavings became the bane of my life. I used to then go to college, and then on the weekends I worked in a salon, a hairdressing salon on Saturdays, and a post office on Sundays. And I just didn't really want to ever have to ask any body for anything. And so I definitely worked a lot, probably too much. But I believe that's how, you know, that hustle mentality, that's how we gained that freedom. And so I fell into hairdressing really young. I fell in love with it. Everything about it was creative. It gave me space to be myself. But it was so sociable, and working with just so many different people, women especially, you know, I worked with so many women, and I worked my way through every role within that industry. But I think through all the years of hairdressing that it led to, I really learned so much about women and the problems that we face and the feeling, similar feelings. But I think it was in that space that I realised I gave women a safe space to feel seen and heard, to be vulnerable. And I realised that that was my gift. That was why I was so successful and busy as a hairstylist. But around that time in my 20s, I fell in love like hook, line, and sinker. And I fell so in love that I really lost all of my boundaries. I lost my self-worth. I missed many, many, many red flags. And it took probably a lot more than it should have. No, it definitely took a lot more than it should have. But it was almost like getting on a bus and missing your stop over and over again. And then eventually the bus crashed and burnt and I had to get off. And I think it was in that moment that I kind of balanced my mindset and realised my own worth and took myself away. But that journey actually took me to Australia, took me travelling. And I think I ran away from the trauma that I'd faced to be heavily smacked in the face with it. And I began a journey there of self-discovery and of finding my way home, back home to me, because I was so lost within that relationship. And I think it's so easy to do that and get caught up in that as a woman, as a young woman, because we believe that our worth is found outside of us. So the hairdressing continued. But then when I came back, I met my partner and I became a mum for the first time at 25, which was super young. And becoming a mum is, wow, the most toughest transition I think a woman will ever face. It's so complex as a role, and I think there's so much that we aren't prepared for. You go in with an expectation of what you think it's going to look like for you and what you think it should be based on your experiences, society, air conditioning, all of the above. And very quickly, it's not that reality. And it's the most beautiful, loving space. But I think it opens your heart so much that it sheds you of a part of you. And it's very easy to feel out of balance and lost within that role very quickly. So my daughter was born then, and then 2 years after, my first son was born. And then a few years after that, my youngest son, so I'm a mum of three, my youngest son was born. And unfortunately, after just a short space of time, we realised that he was poorly. And he was diagnosed with a rare disease at 6 weeks old. And that for me just turned my whole world upside down. I was actually hairdressing. I had my own wedding hair business at the time, and I just completely had to cut that completely. And we ended up being in hospital for a long period of time. It was so challenging, you know, being a mum to two children already. There was so much guilt, there was so much fear around what was happening. We ended up being in hospital the first time for quite a long time, and then he was operated on at around 4 months old. Really big operation. And I think throughout that whole experience, we were as a family really bound by trauma, but I was on my own a lot with a new baby, going through a really traumatic experience. And dealing with the guilt of leaving my other two children at home and not being able to give them the motherhood or the mother that they'd had. And it was a lot to deal with. But I very quickly realised that if I didn't balance my mind, that all of us, it would just cause chaos. And I knew that if I didn't raise my vibration in the middle of this, like low, such low, that it would be impossible for us all to get through it. And so he's gone on to grow to be healthy and strong, but there are complications that still travel and are still with us in his everyday life. He'll have the disease forever. But his journey has taught me so much. And I think coming out of that, I really realised that I had so much more to offer the world, and that I had a light to shine, I suppose, to guide others with, and I'd been dimming it. So yeah, that kind of leads me to now. So after Parker's journey, and we had rode probably the first sort of 12 months of that really difficult time, when we started to adjust. I then went on search of, well, we actually hit COVID. So I went in search of a way that I could look at the gifts that I knew I had and how to implement them. And I went on a course of coaching. It was like self-image coaching, NLP life coaching mixed with styling and outer image and all of that. And I thought, right, I'll start here. And I came to the end of that, and I just knew it wasn't it. And intuitively, I knew I needed help, and I was okay with asking for it. And then I got led to, just by chance, my mentor that I then went to work with for 9 months, who helped me build a business from my purpose, from my heart, from who I am. And that leads me to where I am now, mentoring women. And yeah, that leads me to where I am now.
Amazing. Thank you so much for just sharing everything there, because you know, your life has been so complex, as many of us are. But I think a lot of people that I speak to, even on my like one-to-ones and stuff, is that we all acknowledge the journey itself, but not actually how we felt along the way. But I think that's something you've been able to do. I think because you have such a high intuition and empathy, that I feel like you've been consciously aware of yourself throughout the stages of your life, which is something not a lot of people have. And I think that's a really incredible thing, you know, and a lot of what you shared was, you know, so beautiful. And I think, you know, I'm so glad that your son is doing better and you're, you know, obviously able to deal with that. But, you know, I'm sure there's so many parents listening that couldn't even imagine, you know, that stress and all of that stuff. And what came to me in that time when you were speaking about that was almost like, I feel like maybe your partner was almost the ship of the family, but you're the captain. And I feel like it's up to you to steer the ship, to keep out of the blocks and all of these things. So essentially, you know, like that is really what it is, isn't it? And as we know, like we are a mirror to our whole universe. So the fact that you were, you know, so accountable in that moment, like this is really hard. But in order for us to really sail and thrive as a family, I need to make sure that the path is clear for us and I'm clear. And I think, you know, so many people would be stuck in that situation, but you haven't allowed yourself to be stuck. And I think just from honoring your gifts, really, which is so wonderful and lovely for people to hear, I think, you know. But so much of what you said, I think I mirror in my own life and journey, you know, like of finding this path of helping women, empowering women, you know, down to us both working like 3 jobs, like as we're growing up, you know, like all of that mentality of like not having to ask for help, you know, like that, because when you watch obviously your family suffer financially, or money isn't like you don't watch money flow, you feel like, okay, I've got to do it all on my own. And then that's where that validation thing comes in, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to prove that I can. And for me, it's so heavily toxically masculine that, you know, and I've spoke about this loads of times, it was almost like I felt worthy when I was doing that, you know, when I was doing all the things and people saw me like working to the bone. That was when I felt like I was deserving of the applause or whatever it was,
Yeah.
so toxically. But even within obviously your journey as a hairdresser as well, like all of that. And I know that myself, because I've got friends that have grown up with that are hairdressers, and it is that space where you can be open and honest to your hairdresser. And I know that even like lash technicians and nail technicians, they know more about your life than some of your friends do, because you're open and vulnerable, like you said, in that space. And I think for me, my version of that was being a dance teacher. So obviously in that space, these like young, I mean, I say young girls, I've taught all different ages, but especially the teenage girls, like when I was in that space, like they were able to, tell me about their boyfriends or, all these things. And I was like gradually, like not without realizing, coaching them through. I'm like, well, make sure if you're going to go out that you've got a jacket on, all these little things that you end up giving your wisdom and advice to. And I was like, at that moment, I realized I'd gotten older than what I thought I was. I was like, wow, I'm telling these girls to wear jackets. But it is that, isn't it? This a culmination of like our life experiences and the journey that we've had that have shaped us into the version that we are now.
100%. That I fully believe that our lives have been a path of teachings that lead us to the woman we are now, and it all has a purpose, even those points that feel so heavy and are so hard and are still hard. Even with my son, his journey forward, I have to remove the expectation of what that will look like, because if I sit in expectation, it creates more chaos and hardship. And so I think understanding to surrender to what is, and know that you have a choice in whatever stage of life that you're at. I think that is something I hope everybody learns in their life. I really, really do, because it's so powerful when you're able to know that you have a choice in how you react and how you move forward, in being able to raise your vibration or choose you or choose faith or choose love. And I think when people realize that they have a choice, it's so empowering.
I completely agree with you, and I speak about that quite a lot, and it's quite a harsh reality, isn't it, and a quite a hard pill to swallow, of being like, you can sit in your suffering or you can choose to get out of it. And I think, for both of us, for different reasons, I hope that our life experiences have shown that to people, that you don't have to sit in that victim mentality or whatever it is. And you just said something really important there about surrender, and I think for me, I think surrender and patience have been my biggest lessons to learn, that I'm still learning now. But it's almost like when you trust that, you give yourself the permission to trust that journey and process, although it feels difficult and it takes a bit of time, inevitably that is really all there is, isn't there? It's just trust, surrendering to the process.
100%. I think that, and also compassion and love. I think because when we, so often when we are in hard times, or we reflect back on our past or our experiences, our traumas and all of the above, if we can look at them in a space of compassion and love for everybody involved, knowing that we're all human beings, all walking our own path of teachings, you can move forward in such a more calmer way, in such a more loving way, a more gentle way. And I think that's just as important as surrender.
Yeah, absolutely that. And I think that's something that I learned when I let my armor down and I let myself be vulnerable. That was when I experienced love on a whole nother level. But I think it's because when you're so armored, you don't let anything in or out. So I don't think I really experienced love fully until that moment. And then at that point where I let the guard down, that giving and receiving of love on all levels, but also the giving and receiving of pain was very evident, because I'd numbed myself for so long. But it really is that. And now I feel so much empathy for like everything and everyone that I never did before. I never did. And I'm really open and honest to say that. But it's so powerful. And I think that's something that you just naturally permeate is this beautiful like empathy that I think we need more of in the world.
Thank you.
It is
I think when you look at it like life like that, it's almost like you can choose to put on these glasses and have a brand new perspective. And I think, you know, that's what I teach my clients as well, is like we can choose to look at the world from a completely different perspective, one that stems from love, changes everything.
Absolutely that. And I think a lot of people are scared to do that because it feels vulnerable, doesn't it? And I think that's the thing, like Brene Brown always talks about vulnerability, but the vulnerability of joy as well, you know, like the fact that things could actually feel and be far better and far more amazing than you ever could imagine, but you have to be willing to like surrender to it and let it in, you know. So it's all connected, isn't it? All of this process, like surrender's not always bad, it's sometimes incredible, but we stand in our own way, don't we, a lot of the time?
And I think so many people aren't aware, you know, and they go through the motions of their everyday, and they don't always fully understand why they behave a certain way, or why they think a certain way, or why they're attracting certain things. And we're not taught as young people through our experiences, our schooling, conditioning, to be self-aware.
Absolutely.
So then it's difficult to know you have a choice, because you just think this is what life is.
100% that, and that's everything I'm like doing as well, exactly that.
And then you go as a woman, you know, you head into these expectations of what a life as a woman should look like. So your roles, you know, marriage, wife, children, and you go even into that with an expectation. And that can be difficult to manage when you aren't aware of who you are, or what you believe in or value, or what you want life to look like. Because, as I said, like motherhood especially, it changes so much for you. And if you don't already know or have that connection to yourself and that awareness of yourself, it's so easy to feel lost, stuck, consumed, out of balance, lonely, that nobody understands. And so I think helping women especially to be aware, to go on that journey, to do the work, you know, the work that we both know is so powerful and rewarding. This is the most important work you'll ever do in your lifetime. I really want them all to experience that, not only for themselves, but when you are as a mum, you know, your children benefit from that the most.
Absolutely that. And that's been something that I've been really thinking a lot about myself, because I mean, obviously I'm not in that position yet, but I feel like as a byproduct of my own growth, knowing that that is something that I want in my lifetime, I know now that the version of me that I show up as will be an incredible mum. Whereas the version I was before, 100%. I was never going to be able to give or receive the love that I should, the guidance. And I feel like it is that core thing about the embodiment. You know, you have to be the embodiment of what it is you believe, because if you're not the embodiment of it, it's just empty words. And I think I said this to you when we spoke the other day, that like children especially learn from actions, the actions that you take. So you could tell them till the cows come home, don't do that, but if you're doing it over and over again and they're watching you, they're seeing that, and actually you're teaching them to be deceitful because you're not doing it anyway. It is that, isn't it? You know?
I think the more aware you become as a mum or as a parent, you know, even for dads too, the more aware of yourself you are, the more conscious you are in your parenting. And so that changes everything.
Absolutely.
Because you're able to listen to yourself, you're able to listen to them, you're able to understand with compassion and love, and choose calm over, you know, it will always be a little bit chaotic, like there's no stopping that, but you can choose calm, and it creates a completely different,
it's that really breaking those cycles, isn't it? Because I think I don't take anything away from my upbringing or whatever, but I do think that if my parents were more aware of themselves, things would have been different, and I wouldn't change that. But I think knowing that makes me more aware for then going forward for myself when that time comes. And I think that's a powerful thing, isn't it?
And I think, you know, I've always been told, my parents, both my mum, my dad, my stepmom, they've always said, you know, stepdad, I'm aware. I've always been self-aware. But I think it reflects from them in some ways, for everybody, especially my mum. And you're right, you know, communication has always been really important to me, because I needed it, because I was, you know, between homes, and, you know, it was always very loving. There was never any animosity between them. You know, we were so lucky in that, actually, because it isn't really the norm. But communication has always been really key, and I think even with myself. So yeah, I think all of these tools have been ingrained in me since I was young, really. Probably without realizing, a case of having to. But they are so important, and I hope that I can obviously teach that within my children too.
100%, absolutely. Well, you are the product, so they will absolutely you know, see that from you. And I think it's funny as well, because obviously knowing that you're a Gemini, that really is part of Gemini's ways, is communication and, like, you know, connecting, like, that's all there. And I think that's so evident, like, for you in that. And it's funny because I'm a Leo, so when I think about my communication techniques and styles, it's always been like a blow up, you know, like
both my children are my eldest two are Leos, so
really?
I'm used to Leo energy.
You know, that's it. But when you're a toxic Leo, Jesus, I mean, those times where everyone just stay clear, it's going to be a blow. And everyone knew that of me, and I think that's something now. But I think, you know, within that as well, like, obviously the toxic traits of every sign is, and every person is obviously one side. But I think for me, being a Leo as well, there's a very nurturing, caring side to me that I've always had, that I was covering up for a long time. So now I'm in that full space of surrender and trust and vulnerability. That side of me leads. So it's, you know, the raw is well at the back now. It doesn't come out until it needs to be.
We all need a bit of a raw.
That's it, a little bit of substance. But no, well, it is, I mean, thank you for sharing all of that, because it is so incredible. And I think what I would like to know, really, and I think audience would like to know, is obviously because you found a really beautiful balance, and, you know, the fact you've always been self-aware, which is something that a lot of people aren't. What are the obstacles in your life that have continued to come up in terms of, like, for yourself? Like, what is that one thing that you're continuing to work on for you?
I think it always comes down to knowing your own worth. I think as a woman, I think that always is something that always will come up through my experiences. And, you know, self-doubt and all of those kind of things, all of those things, you know, that I think women struggle with every day, because, like I said, we are so conditioned to believe that everything that we need, or that our worth is found outside of ourselves. And so many of us had these experiences, and I think that causes such an imbalance. Is not knowing that you are enough exactly as you are, and not knowing that you are your home, you know, and that actually, truthfully, balance is found within us. And so I think, as you know, like, when you go on this journey and you do this work, it's a forever thing. You know, I will forever be dedicated to my own personal development, my own growth, my own, you know, spiritual journey, and all of the above. But as you evolve, because we're constantly evolving, I feel like that work that felt so difficult initially becomes gentler, becomes easier. You find more flow in that, and that then affects your whole entire life. So I think that is probably the one thing that comes back to, and I have no, you know, in admitting that and being vulnerable and sharing that, because I know so many women feel that too, and it's not their fault, you know. It's just the way we have been conditioned and the way we've been made to believe all of those things that aren't true.
No, absolutely that. And I think, you know, you've said it a few times now about the fact that we feel like happiness is found outside of ourselves. And it is just so true, isn't it? And I think especially, you know, for women societally, for generations, you know, even as mothers, you know, that there's always comments now about oh, you should be going back to work now, you shouldn't be going back to work now. There's so much judgment, isn't there? But really and truly, if you are, you know, so self-aware, so self-assured, and know that you are giving 100% to whatever it is that you want to do and be, that other people's opinions don't matter.
Exactly.
But we get so swept into it, don't we? Because, you know, people are constantly judging what women are doing, you know.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's difficult because we are truly surrounded by a world of shame, of judgment, of expectation. And that's, you know, what always gets me the most is that it's so contradicting, especially when it comes to, you know, motherhood. And I think that we have to understand that no two women are walking the same path, experiencing the same life, the same journey. Even through motherhood, there is no comparison. You know, there's no two women that have the same, you know, each child individually is a different journey. You know, each 3 children that I've had has been a different journey into motherhood. And so I think learning to let go of that, you know, blur that outside noise, release that expectation, have the tools to release the judgment, release shame, and know that you are enough as you are, and walking your path has no comparison to anybody else, is massive. And it's so important with compassion and love and finding your balance, that's where you find it, is within. It's not found anywhere else.
Absolutely.
And so I think once you know that, you can then create flow for your life. You know, because there's always going to be ups and downs, there's always going to be things that are out of our control. But I think once you know who you are, and you like who you are, and you show yourself love and compassion, and you know that this is your journey and no one else's, you know, that's when you can then move forward and find your flow, find your balance, and live happy and aligned.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like you took the words out of my mouth, Jade. I would have said exactly the same thing. And I almost feel like the self-doubt thing is almost like, I feel like truly in the core of our being, we always know the right answer and what we're supposed to do. And it's almost like our heart is the compass, is the sat nav. And it's a bit like when your sat nav's going, your heart's telling you where to go, and you doubt the sat nav, and you just decide to take a reroute, and then it gets you where you didn't want to go, and you end up being lost because you doubted the sat nav. And it's like you have to trust that your heart always knows where you're supposed to go. And don't get me wrong, I don't for one second think that the reroutes are gonna ever deter you from the journey. I think you'll always get back to where you're supposed to be, but it might just be more difficult along the way. So, you know, the more work, like we said, you can do to trust yourself and to understand and know that you will always get there.
I think you're so right. That reconnecting, and that's why I think I'm so passionate about reconnecting women to themselves, so that they can then hear their voice, hear their intuition, hear who they are, find who they are underneath all of those layers of conditioning, all of that trauma, all of those expectations, because that's when you can align and just live your life to the full. And trust and surrender and all of those wonderful, beautiful things.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really what it is, isn't it? It's like we're clouded by all of those things that are on top of us. Like I always say, it's like, you know, the little light inside of us is just covered by all of these obstacles and barriers and like barricades. And it's like the work is actually unlearning always. So then we can then shine ourselves out brightly, because there's not a clear pathway. So if you're wanting all these beautiful things and you can see your future for yourself, but you are still carrying the weight of all of your trauma, drama, all of these things that, you know, are limiting beliefs, other people's opinions, you're carrying that on your back like a turtle. And actually you're not meant to be a turtle, you're actually meant to be a dolphin, and you've got like a turtle shell on you. You're not going to be able to swim, are you? Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
you go very slow.
Yeah, that's it.
No, it's so true. And like, I literally had this conversation with my client this morning about, you know, how sometimes our past and that heaviness and the stuff that we haven't healed, our trauma, our limiting beliefs, is like covering that door to that next part of you, that next potential, that next path that you want to walk on. And it's not until you do the work to be able to remove that you can see the door and go through the door. It's so 100%. Right.
And that's all the work I teach as well, exactly that. It's like, you know, you can't you can't get anywhere. It's like you're trying to ignite like a match. You're trying to light the match, but there's too much surrounding. It's just not going to light, you know. And that's the same with your manifestations, your dreams, your desires. You have to clear the pathway.
And I think this is why we're both so passionate, because we've done the work, we're doing the work, we're dedicated to our own work.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, when you know the difference it makes to your life, you want that for everyone.
Absolutely, 100% that. And it is almost to a point where I can see it so clearly in people, when I'm like, you just won't get there until you do it. And that's really my thing now, is in my life in general, and what I'm teaching is that until you choose to do that work, you just won't have the life that you deserve. And that is on you to take that accountability for yourself, and keep repeating the same stuck patterns that are limiting you and holding you back. Or you can choose to release yourself and give yourself the permission to be everything you want to be and more. And I guess maybe that links to my next point, actually, which, when would you say was the point in your life that you truly gave yourself the permission to be the most fullest version of you?
I think for sure Parker's journey into the world. I think I will never forget that fear of handing my son over and not knowing how he will return. Like they couldn't give me an answer on what was going to happen to him. And I think in that moment, to surrender and trust, you know, was huge. It was a huge wake up call in respects of life, and you know how it's for the living, and you know, to not hold back and not be held back by all of the things that we know hold us back in life. And I think I just looked at that whole situation as it was a huge push to know that you just got to go for it, and that, you know, my light's too bright to dim, and I've got to stop. And yeah, I 100% think it was that moment. It just propelled me forward in a space of love. And I think that is, it was in that space of love that really pushed me forward, and gave myself permission. And I think I also realised, you know, I've got these beautiful children who I'm so grateful for, and I want them to see me being my most authentic self, like living from my truth, and being honest and open about the work, and you know what it takes to do that. And I think obviously I have my why, but they are a huge part of that.
Absolutely that. No, 100%. And I think, you know, what's so beautiful about that is that a lot of people, that journey and experience would have broken, but it really made you, you know. And I think if anyone can take that away from that situation, and one of the most difficult thing I think anyone could ever imagine, whether you have kids or not, you know, the fact that you were able to thrive in that situation through just, you know, really surrendering. And as I said, surrender is such a hard thing for me. So, you know, watching, and I've had to do it, but, you know, watching you do that on such a large scale is very inspiring. And I'm sure that, you know, everyone listening will feel exactly the same. So I guess now, what would you say for people listening, that they can do actionable steps right now, some top tips that you can give them to finding balance? What do you recommend, like, for them to start doing today?
I think especially for women who are mums, caregivers, but everyone in general, I think creating space for you to be heard is extremely important. And I will swear by a morning routine. And when I say that, it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. But I know the difference from my 20-year-old self who was a mum to now, the difference that giving myself that space to be heard, for myself to be heard, is so important and crucial to the day, and finding balance within my day and choosing calm within my day. You know, through all of the things that you talk about, you know, journaling, meditation, exercise, walks, anything, all of the above, in a way that suits you. And I think that's really important.
I
think so many of us when we are looking at creating any change for ourselves, focus so far forward.
Absolutely.
And we look so out of ourselves again at what everybody else is doing. But what we have to do is just find what works for us and start small, and that starts to create that change. And I think, yeah, my number one would be creating space for you to be heard, whether that's through journaling, like your journal, or through meditation, or through dance, exercise, yoga, whatever it is that works for you, even if it's in the most smallest way, is really powerful.
I completely agree with you. I see it so much even in my like one-to-one clients as well, is that they want to be, you know, this really fit, active person, but they haven't done any exercise for like 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, that's not realistic, you know, but we have to one step at a time. And it is that small, steady consistency that creates, you know, like even when we're talking about meditation, you know, like you can start for just a minute a day, can't you? Just 1 minute a day, and then the next.
Like us. 100%. You could do it whilst you're brushing your teeth, you know. It's
absolutely.
I explain it as like, you know, this is your home. So, you know, we take care of our homes, we create space in our homes for ourselves, we find that room that feels, you know, safe, and we can feel seen and heard in there within ourselves. And I think that's what our mind is, and we have to give space for that every single day, even if it's in the most smallest way.
100%. I completely agree. And I love that you say about it being your home, because it really is that, isn't it? Your body, your mind, your soul. And in so many words, I guess I'm saying exactly the same thing, but it just feels so much more like real in a gentle way, the way you say it, which is just so lovely. But is there, like, I like to say, like, there's like a little segment I call Soul to Soul, and it's kind of like a bit of a channeled message that you feel like your soul would like the audience to hear, or what someone needs to hear listening right now.
I think probably to all the women who feel like they are lost and stuck, I want them to know that from the moment they choose themselves, you know, not at the expense of everybody they love, it's for them, and it will benefit everybody they love. I think, you know, I see so many women and mums especially who struggle with prioritizing themselves. And I always like to say, you know, making yourself a priority does not mean the priority over your children or over, you know, anybody that you take care of or love. But making yourself a priority is so important, and stops you from feeling stuck.
Absolutely. No, absolutely that. And it really is that, as we said, you know, the whole thing we've been speaking about is like, we are the mirror, aren't we? So the minute you choose you love you, your children in turn will learn that as well, won't they? And it's that cycle that you're creating. No, it's been so lovely having you, Jade. Like I said, I'm sure that listeners can hear your just your energy and like your softness. And I'm always inspired by people with a soft nature, because it's something that I don't have myself, you know, like, as in my nature isn't soft, and it's okay, and I'm fine with that, but I'm so enticed by it, because I'm like, oh wow, I need some of that in my life, and it's really lovely, you know, like I love.
Well, likewise, you equally inspire me.
Yeah, maybe it's that we've got that fire and air energy.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much. And I think now, how can people work with you? Where can they find you? What have you got on? What have you got coming up?
So you can find me at www.jadeelana.com. It's my website. I am also on Instagram, TikTok, and all them, Jade Elana. But I have a Finding Your Balance masterclass coming up. That's on the 9th of June, and that's in Kent at Ode Street. And this is a masterclass on brunch. It's really just bringing like-minded women together, teaching, inspiring, and supporting one another in a really vulnerable space. And there's some brilliant food included. So everybody should be there, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I'll second that. 1, because Jade's amazing, but 2, because the food is great there.
Yeah.
No, amazing.
Literally.
And then people can just find you online, and if anything resonates with anyone and they feel like they need one-to-one support from you, obviously they can drop you a message and find
and
you
I'm on Instagram. It's at _Jade Elana _ again.
Amazing. Well, I'll pop in your links anyway on the
Thank you,
description so
darling.
people
Thank
can
you.
find you.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your time and energy and all your beautiful wisdom, because yeah, I mean, I think you're amazing, and I'm sure everyone listening does too.
Oh, thank you, honey. Likewise, honestly. Thank you for having me. It's been a beautiful conversation.
No, it really has. Oh, well, lots of love.
And you.
Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader for Women. If you are ready to up-level, to elevate, to ignite your inner flame, to burn everything you once were, to trailblaze into your future, into all of your manifestations and more, then head to my website to book a free 30-minute alignment call. I have one-to-one containers available for 90 days and 180 days. I also have an online program for 6 weeks. It's a group program for women called Permission to Shine. That's also available as a self-study as well. I have a journal available on Etsy as well as worksheets. There's multiple ways to work with me, and I'm here to help you. You deserve to shine, to be the most amazing, most confident, fearless version of yourself. What are you waiting for?